Nisreen, can you tell us a little bit about what's coming up on AMI Audiobook Review?
Next up, we're having a book club roundtable. Joining our conversation is audiobook contributor and bookworm Aamer Khan. We dive into a book club question that we asked you guys on social media, and we will be sharing those answers too. The question is, who's your favorite character of all time and why? So I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Simple question that made me feel like a dork because I asked a lot of people and they were like, I don't know. I don't know why I like that character. I just do. And but dig deep, like why? And then they asked me like, Jay, why do you care so much about this? Like I do. I just want to dig deep. But Niz, I totally forgot to bring you in to introduce you. You're coming in from Mississauga and you're a producer on AMI Audiobook Review. And I think it was your idea to ask this question. So we're bringing you on to this roundtable that we're going to be having with Aamer Khan. It's going to be you, me, and Aamer reading through a whole bunch of these answers that we got from the book club. And we got a whole lot. Did you, I don't know if you had the time to read through some of these or you wanted to make them a surprise. Did you notice any themes as to what people liked?
I guess their personalities, their themes of character personalities that really stuck out to people. I think that's all I'm gonna give. That's the sneak peek I'm giving.
Short and sweet. You know what? Let's just, we can get into it right now. I think we're all set for today's AMI Audiobook Review. You're listening to AMI Audio Book Review. I'm your host, Jacob Szymanski. Characters are the heart and soul of fictional stories, and I don't think that's controversial. Over the next 30 minutes, I want to analyze why we sometimes connect so strongly with fictional people that don't even exist. It really is one of the coolest things books can do when you really think about it. Niz, do you agree with me that characters are the heart and soul of fictional stories?
I absolutely agree with you. I feel like if you really if you really think about your favorite characters, this determines that you have a favorite book as well, and I think that just balances out. I definitely feel that. I feel like if you hate characters that much, you're gonna hate the book. I feel like there has to be a level to it. But
and if you love a character,
yes.
Yeah, if you love a character, you almost certainly love the book too. They go together. If you hated a book, it's probably because you really hated the main character.
Yeah. I agree with you. I feel like it surfs back to the question, what's really important to you when reading a book, when listening to a book, and people pick character first rather than the theme or the plot. So I feel like it does really reflect on your decision here.
We asked our book club this question. Who is your favorite fictional character of all time and why? Be specific about what it is that makes you feel so strongly about them. It can be a character from any book. With these answers, we're hoping that we can get some insight into why we get so attached to fake people. We'll be doing this roundtable style with you, Niz, me, and a regular contributor to AMI Audiobook Review, Aamer Khan. Aamer, how's it going?
Great. Always happy to be here.
Aamer, you haven't seen these submissions yet, but do you think you can predict some common themes as to why readers get attached to characters?
I'm going to guess that a lot of people like reading characters that are fun and clever and do things that you don't always expect. I think for a lot of us, we read books to be somewhat surprised. I mean, if you already know what the book is about and how the characters are going to react, I mean, not many people would pick up that book, I think. That's my theory anyway.
Yeah, the last thing you want is a character that's dull. You want somebody that jumps off the page. And one thing I specifically really dislike in books is the mundane. I don't want people doing everyday things. I don't want people being ordinary. I want people to be extraordinary for good and bad reasons. If I can make my own predictions, or I'll put the enjoyment of characters in a couple different categories. One is like relatability. I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. If you can see yourself in a character, see a character's struggles and relate to them, you're automatically going to like them. Or it might make you feel uncomfortable, to be honest. Another thing is complexity and depth. This is something that's difficult to do, but if you can psychoanalyze a character for an hour and still not be fully sure of where they are and you don't really get a full picture of them, then I think that's a good character with a lot of complexity. And the other thing is someone that's inspiring. Just because a character is inspiring, it doesn't make them relatable. It's just a character that you aspire to. They might just be particularly good at what they do. They might just be very they might be worthy of imitation in certain aspects too, in the way they comport themselves. And a special fourth category that I'll add is the rule of cool. Sometimes it's not that deep. Sometimes they're just really cool, and I think that's totally fine. I think we should start with a submission from Ramya Amuthan. She's a host on Kelly and Ramya. That show airs at 2 p.m. Eastern on AMI TV and AMI Audio. But once upon a time, she was a host on this show until I usurped her position. But we got her to record her answer for this question because she's opinionated about everything, but especially about books. Let's take a listen to her answer.
Hey guys, so picking a favorite character of all time in any book is way too difficult without bringing up Harry Potter, so I'm not going to give you that opportunity. I'm going to go with vividly memorable, and that to me is Scarlett O'Hara from Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. She sticks with me. She mostly aggravated the heck out of me, and I couldn't stand her through most of the book, and obviously neither could many of the other characters in Gone with the Wind, but my goodness, is she not stamped in me years later. She's fiery, she's witty, she never takes no for an answer, she never could. Her attitude, though, is unbearable, and she's so vicious, and she snipes, and it cuts deep. Though I think that overall she's just such a beautiful, messy, chaotic character. And I could go on and on and on about the roller coaster of emotions that comes with admiring a character like Scarlett O'Hara, but what really sticks with me through all of this is that this woman, which you could argue that she's a girl, is so naive throughout the book. She thinks she owns the place, she owns the people, she fully believes that she's entitled for everything and anything and deserves her way all the time. Like, she's so vain that she thinks that she is in a world of people who just don't get her. Super self-obsessed. But then Mel gets sick and she dies. This is Melanie Hamilton Wilkes. And Scarlett, who throughout this book until this moment could not stand Mel and just absolutely doesn't have even the nicest things to say about this beautiful person, she has a visceral reaction. Something like the shattering of her perception of the world as she knew it. It goes to flames. And the way that the author wrote that reaction, none of us believed up until this moment that Scarlett could be taken down a notch. You know, her ego was up there. That she could care about anything or anyone other than herself was beyond us. But that moment took us to a place, a depth with Scarlett O'Hara that no matter how much she tried to convince us otherwise afterwards, after this moment, that she's still this cold person, this unwavering human being. We already knew. We had that moment with her. That weakness, that grief. She lost some kind of love that she didn't even know she had before that moment. And that's the mark that brings me back to Scarlett often. You know, it's so special that a person who was so detested, we could still have that real moment of intimacy with her. So Scarlett sticks with me.
Aamer, thoughts?
Wow, I just can't believe she didn't go with Harry Potter. That's
No, she
that's
showed
rare.
some restraint.
I know. I
Yes.
know. I
Yes,
haven't read
I
Gone with the
really
Wind, so
thought
I
she was
can't.
gonna go. I
Yeah, I
really
haven't.
thought she was gonna go over Harry Potter for sure.
Yeah,
But
and I haven't read Gone with the Wind, so I can't really relate to Scarlet, but definitely sounds like some characters I've come across in many books. Actually, the Will Trent series, which I talked about last time, has a character named Angie, and her personality is she derives some pleasure out of basically other people's pain, and you don't really understand it from that sort of statement, but the author does a great job of making the reader understand why that is, and it's a fascinating thing to look at from a character perspective.
I think what Rams hit on there is one thing she really liked about this character was the character development, which is
Mhm.
less of an aspect of the character and more of an aspect of the author's writing and development of that character. I mean, it's all connected, but I don't think a character can be as memorable and likable if they stay static for the duration of the story. Um, I'll say if a character is very memorable and likable from the start and then changes and is still memorable and likable, that's the sign of a really good character. Niz, did you want to read the next submission, the one from Danielle McLaughlin?
Absolutely. So, Daniel McLaughlin says, "Oh, good question. Since I have a lot of favorite characters who are very serious, Hamlet comes to mind. I'm instead going to choose a funny one from a series of detective novels, Inspector Dover. He is a very aloof, he is very lazy, he is rude, a slob, and only interested in eating." I love the description. Okay, so as she continues and says, also, he solves all the crimes. The series was made into BBC radio plays, so it can be found on the BBC website. And I think our audience will, she says, I think your audience will enjoy reading and listening to the dreadful detective.
This guy sounds like a cat, aloof, lazy, and is only interested in eating.
Right?
This is one of those things. I find some characters, they have very little that's redeeming about them, but they still jump off the page for those exact reasons, because there's nothing redeeming about them. You just want to know more about why they are the way they are. And I don't think Danielle McLaughlin would have loved this character, Inspector Dover, unless he was somebody that was still likable and had some depth despite those flaws.
Yeah, and the willingness to solve the crime, right? I think that's probably the key core of it, right? I mean, maybe he's lazy, maybe he's whatever, but he's interested in maybe finding the end solve, you know?
I wonder what
Reminds me of
motivates him.
Yeah, exactly. Then you're like, you have to do the reverse calculation of why it's important to him to solve the crime if he's very lazy and awful at doing it.
Okay, I'll read this one from Debbie Williams. My favorite character is Harry Bosch. He's a detective from the Harry Bosch series by Michael Connolly. I like that he's a bit of a rebel, but he really works hard on his cases. I love the way Michael builds the character. He's presented as a detective, but also as an ordinary person with life experiences. So that's two detectives in a row now. I think it's clear that people really like crime novels and mysteries. This is a character that seems to be mundane, which falls in the category of things that I really don't like, to be honest. But some people like that. They want somebody who's ordinary. I know my mom has made those kinds of statements before. She's like, "Oh, it's not realistic. Like, I want something that just feels like real life. I want something extremely realistic." Niz, can you relate to that?
I'm the type of person that likes the character just for being good. And I know it sounds boring and dull, but when they stay the same, like you mentioned that the character has to be likable and memorable. And for that to happen, he has to be maybe connected to you in some way from the beginning, really does good, maybe surprises you, challenges come, and still makes the right decision in doing good. I'm not sure if you're following me, but I feel like when that makes a person likable but not really memorable, unless that surprise comes. So I feel that I'm the type of person that really likes a character just for staying good the whole time, but maybe it depends on the genre. Do you feel
Yeah,
like
I
it
think
depends on the genre?
I'm not sure.
You
I
can
mean,
go ahead,
just
Amr.
I just wanted to talk about the Harry Bosch because I've actually read that series. I think the reason why this character is very likable is because he didn't really have a whole lot of choice. From sort of Harry Bosch's origin story, he really didn't have parents or anybody to guide him along his way. He found
Mm,
himself sort of through the, school system, and then, he was drafted into Vietnam, and he came back, and, from books we've read and from history, we know that Vietnam vets weren't treated the best when they were back in stateside. And, he made the decision to join the police force because he really didn't know what else to do. But once there, he has this character development where he has to come up with his own moral compass because most of the Harry Bosch series takes place in Los Angeles in the 1980s and, more towards our time frame. So there's a lot of decisions he has to make in terms of race riots and the individual cases he has, his own morality versus what the law actually says, and all these types of things. So even though his character is not very complex, he has to deal with very complex problems, which sort of go towards his morality.
Often it's not the character themselves that's fascinating. It's the dynamic of the character with the setting that they're put in. Right? Like they can be like I called that character mundane, but maybe that's a bit unfair.
Oh, and I feel like it also depends on how they connect with the main character, their dynamic relationship with the main character.
Yeah, that's
you
right. Because
feel that?
characters don't exist in a vacuum; they interact with each other. So just because a
Yeah.
character on their own isn't the most complex, sometimes they feel like they're a hinge to another character, to another aspect of another character, and they have a dynamic that works together. They don't live in a vacuum. You're listening to AMI Audiobook Review. I'm your host, Jacob Shamansky, and right now we're talking to Nisreen, Abdel-Majid, and Aamer Khan about answers from the book club. And the question was, who is your favorite fictional character of all time and why? Niz, do you want to read the next one?
Yeah, so Lila Wick answers, "Oh my gosh, it has to be Luna Lovegood from Harry Potter. I mean, how could you not adore her? Luna is
An excellent choice.
unapologetically herself." I knew one of the answers were related to Harry Potter, by the way, before I read them. So Luna is unapologetically herself, quirky, dreamy, and she's got that magical ethnicity, and that's just so captivating. She's totally comfortable being the odd one out, wearing her crazy radish earrings and reading the Quibbler upside down. She reminds me to embrace my weirdness and be creative no matter what. I love that, and I can relate to that, and I agree with that.
Yeah, great character. She's also a really good, like, platonic friend to Harry in that series. It's just a really refreshing breath of fresh air. And by the way, I think you meant authenticity, not ethnicity. I don't know if authenticity is magical.
The small words on my screen. That's
Wait, by the
I
way,
don't think
Amr,
anybody. Yep,
have you ever read Harry Potter?
I have. I've read the series at the request of a certain friend, which you all know. But
Oh,
yeah, I
God.
did. I don't think anybody can forget the radish earrings. That's a classic from Luna Lovegood there.
What were your thoughts on Luna?
She reminds me a lot of Phoebe's character from Friends, from that
Yes.
series, in terms of being completely unapologetic but quirky and sort of not in the mainstream and not worried about being in the mainstream. There's a few characters like that in Harry Potter, which
Yeah.
come to mind. It's been a while since I've read the series, but and I wanted to mention sometimes we really read, especially long-standing series, more for the cast of characters than the main character as well. I mean, I know for myself, one of my favorites is Eve Dallas from the In Death series by Nora Roberts, and she doesn't make friends easily, Eve Dallas, but all her friends are very, very interesting, and each book kind of introduces some new friends or new things, and you're always looking forward to seeing what kind of friends she's going to make next. And if I could, I'd just like to ask, I mean, what do you guys think of the charismatic bad guy? I think that's something that a lot of people really enjoy reading about, especially with crime thrillers or things like that. I don't know if we have any in our submissions, but I think a lot of us do enjoy reading or watching the charismatic bad guy.
The charismatic bad guy, big yes. I think if you have a villain, like a pure villain, that's just there to be a stand-in for evil that doesn't have any character, boring. There's no reason to care about them. Bonus points for villains that are almost sympathetic and you kind of understand their cause. I mean, I just like charismatic characters, period.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I feel like I really would like to know how this evil character came to be. And when you find out, you know, their history and how they came to be a very evil person and to become a villain, that's when you realize you're like sympathizing for this character and you wonder if, you know, he's or she's the person, how this person came to be. So I like reading about a character that's evil and learning how this person came to be.
Yeah, I want to know your motivations. I mean, that applies to people in real life. I think are very morally objectionable. Like I want to know how the really crooked billionaires came to be the way they are and why they think the way they do, and that applies to villain characters too.
Deep down, you know, there's something good about them deep down, and you're trying to like search for this. Yeah, I feel like
maybe there is
a redeeming quality.
I'm convincing you that it's a good person. But yeah, I feel like deep down you sympathize for this character, and yeah.
The other half of Kelly and Ramya also sent in a submission. This is the answer from Kelly McDonald.
Good day. My favorite fictional character, it would be Spencer from the Spencer for Hire books. This is the Robert B. Parker series. He's a Boston private detective who over the years has been that strong, rugged, former cop boxer who has every quality of toughness and even has a sidekick, Hawk, who assists him sometimes and is always on the verge of walking the dark side in the criminal world. But he always has Spencer's back. Spencer has so many of those tough guy qualities mixed in with an efficient mind, and some of the problems in the book are more like emotions, dealing with things, having to decide what is the lesser of evils when it comes to solving a crime. Not always conventional. You see his tenderness towards his girlfriend and their dog Pearl in most of the books, and the great relationship that he and his lady have. But they do explore and have those conversations about what a relationship should be and what to expect from the other. Whether they're discussing each other's cases, since she's a psychiatrist and he a private detective, they might be talking while making dinner simply. The most colorful foods, too, I will say, they depict in these stories always give you a great, recipe and description. They might be just jogging or house cleaning. The books make up all the scenarios possible that a full life can have, with everyday problems. They're not made out to be heroes, but smart people, but certainly not people to mess with either. They enjoy life, and that's expressed in the books. Spencer's banter with people from the underworld just makes you laugh. There's a kind of subtle but bold confidence he always has. He has that same kind of repartee when it comes to former co-workers on the police force. That makes it quite enjoyable, and he still has a lot of good friends over there. The books have been able to stand up to the test of time, and I love, as a blind person, the amazing descriptions that are provided. And you might think the books are filled with violence, but they're not. Wonderful Spencer for Hire series.
I heard the expression everyday problems. No. That is not for me. I am not interested whatsoever.
You're not interested in people cooking dinner?
No, absolutely not. What do you get out of that? I do that every day.
I was surprised. Not surprisingly, it's another gumshoe detective character. So I don't know how to feel about that. I mean, we talked about recommendations a lot on the segments, and I'm not sure I'm steered towards reading it or not reading it, frankly.
What does that say about Kelly's recommendation? It's all valid though.
think-
like I'm not trying to disparage
yeah,
him.
exactly. No. I mean, and it wasn't a recommendation. I mean, why he, his favorite character, and I was just putting it in the context of a recommendation in terms of what I would like personally. I mean, I love detective novels and things, but to your point, I mean, I love food, I love recipes, but do I want to hear about everyday life throughout a novel? Not so much. But he did say that there is a relationship piece that they talk about, and I'm finding a lot of it's a recent trend where it's not just especially detective stories are not just about action and plot and character development, but that these characters are opening themselves up to romantic relationships and actually talking about it, which is fascinating to me. So that aspect I really enjoy.
We only have a couple minutes left, and we haven't gotten to our favorite characters.
Oh my!
Fairly quickly, Niz, who's your favorite fictional character of all time?
Okay, favorite very quickly is kind of impossible because I had two answers, but let's do the first one. Elizabeth Bennet from Pride and Prejudice. By the way, we did have a quick Facebook answer that they say that Elizabeth Bennet from Pride and Prejudice is their favorite character, and it's the same reason. Her intelligence, her wit, her independence to stand out in a time when women had limited societal roles. Elizabeth's journey of self-discovery and her critical perspective on social norms make her a timeless and relative figure whose personal growth and strong sense of self are truly admirable, and it's relatable. So no, wonderful character.
Classic feminist character. Aamer, what about you?
I'm going to hold my tongue on comments about Pride and Prejudice, but for me, it's Kate Daniels from Yvonne Andrews' series, which I've talked about before. Kate Daniels is a monster hunter. She's very tough, but true to recent trends, she's also not so tough that she can't have some romance. So there's a lot in the book about morality, monster hunting, as well as opening yourself up to relationships, which I find extremely fascinating and definitely a cool character to follow.
Sorry, and from what series was that?
The Kate Daniels series, yeah.
The Kate Daniels series.
Mm-hmm.
Very quickly, my favorite character of all time is Giselle Den Luther from the First Law series by Joe Abercrombie. He's one of my favorite characters because he's unbelievably egotistical and thinks so little of everyone else, but it only works because that book is told from very limited first-person perspectives. So you get to see from inside the mind of a narcissist egomaniac and how little he thinks of everybody else. And as he goes through the story, he's put in situations that make him question his self-worth. And later on, he's put in situations that really challenge his ego in a way that he needs to keep his ego in check. And can he do it or can he not? And you see that from a first-person perspective, which is, I think, is something that Joe Abercrombie does particularly well. We're pretty much out of time, guys. Sorry to all the submissions we didn't get to. I didn't realize how many we would have.
Yes.
Nisreen, thank you so much for organizing this.
This was so much fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And Aamer Khan, thanks so much.
Always a pleasure to be here.
That was Aamer Khan, a regular contributor to AMI Audiobook Review. He's our audiobook curator. That's all the time we have on AMI Today. If you missed any of it, you can catch the repeat of AMI Today on AMI Audio every 8 hours. You can also find the show on your favorite podcast platform. Plus, you can watch the program again on YouTube shortly after the show ends. We'll be back here tomorrow around the same time at 11 a.m. Eastern. I'm Jacob Szymanski. Thanks for listening.